All right. It is now noon and people continue to join, but I'd like to get started. I'm sorry. This session will be recorded. I'd like to welcome you all to the April session of the Erie County Workforce Collaborative Training Series. My name is Amy Rockwood. I am from the Erie County Department of Mental Health, and we are delighted to be able to offer these trainings to the dedicated providers in our community. These trainings are being offered to support workforce retention and provide an opportunity for individuals from our provider community to share their expertise with other providers. Today, we are so fortunate to have Dr. Kirsten Vincent, CEO of Recovery Options Made Easy, who will be talking about vicarious trauma and resilience. Because of the importance of this topic to everyone who works in this field, we're actually going to make this a two-part series. Today will be part one, and Kirsten will continue the discussion in our May session. The May session will be Tuesday, May 25th from 12 to 1, and I'd encourage you to invite your colleagues to join us as well. I'm also pleased to announce that the topic for the June session will be suicide prevention, and the title is Lethal Means Reduction, the How of Suicide Prevention That Makes a Difference. Celia Spacone, the coordinator of the Erie County Suicide Prevention Coalition, and Katie Couric from the VA will be our presenters. I will be sending out invites for both of these events in the next couple of days. You can also find links to register for the upcoming events on the Erie County Department of Mental Health web pages. All of the trainings are the fourth Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1. This is truly a community collaborative, and we're looking for volunteers to fill out the calendar for the year to share expertise with our community of providers. If you're interested in doing a 1-hour presentation, please contact me. Also, if you have an interest in any particular topic that you'd like to see covered in one of these sessions, let me know that too, and we'll try to find a presenter. My email address is amy.rockwood@erie.gov. It's AMY and the rest is phonetic. This training will be recorded, which I mentioned already. If you're not okay with this being recorded, you can disconnect now. Everyone is muted, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Kathleen Larson from the Erie County Department of Mental Health will be monitoring the chat for us during the session. One more thing, at the end of the session, we'll be asking you to complete a very brief evaluation. We hope you'll take a moment to fill this out so we can continue to improve and make this a meaningful and valuable use of your time. At this point, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Kirsten Vincent, who will be sharing her expertise about vicarious trauma and resilience. Thank you so much, Kirsten, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. This is a very important subject, very near and dear to me. So I'm extremely humbled and proud to be able to talk with you about this today. As Amy said, we will be turning this into a two-part series. So I don't mean to leave you on a cliffhanger, but I might leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But I really feel that we are all in an industry where we work a lot with people. And there are many times when we encounter situations that are challenging. We have really big hearts, and a lot of times we take on more than we should. So if nothing else, when you are done with these two presentations, I'm hoping that you'll have gained some tools for your own personal toolbox to utilize when you're feeling a little scared, when you're feeling overwhelmed. And I hope you come away with a better understanding of how to support yourself to maintain your wellness. So first we have to get well, then we have to maintain our wellness. Right. Amy, are you doing the slide? Can they see the slides?
I hope so.
I think we can skip that one. That's just my name. You don't need that. Rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve others from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. I love this quote. I love this quote so much, and it's actually in the presentation another time for a different reason. We do our work, and we are taking who we are as good people, and we're utilizing that strength to support others. If you let yourself get completely drained, energy-wise, mental health-wise, physical health-wise, how can you continue to do your job? It is very challenging. So when we keep our own personal cup full, we are able to do our jobs, and we are able to do them with a lot more happiness and pride than you're able to do when you don't. Right, next slide, Amy. Okay, so as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about burnout, vicarious trauma, and we'll start the self-care discussion, but that will be the majority of the second workshop. Now, I do know that many of you know the definitions of these words, but I want to talk about them a little bit more as they pertain to us as workers. The next slide, Amy. So what are the workforce concerns that we have? Everything kind of gets bundled out of into vicarious trauma, but it also includes compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma, and then burnout. Right. Next slide, Amy. So when you think of vicarious trauma, there's also another set of words that tends to come with it. I mentioned secondary post-traumatic stress, secondary traumatic stress, secondary traumatic stress disorder, compassion fatigue, compassion stress, soul sadness, empathetic strain, and contact victimization. When you work in this field, it's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. That you're going to take home more on a given day than you should. And when it happens occasionally, that's okay. It's when we start taking on so much that we cause our bodies and our minds to start having symptoms. Next slide, Amy. For those of you who don't know me, you'll find out pretty quickly I love quotes. I'm a quote collector. When I can find quotes that fit into my work, I get really happy. This is long, so you probably don't need to hear me read it to you. But if you want to read it to yourselves as I start to talk about it, that would be great. This basically points back to what I've said already, that you can't live for your work. It can't be the only thing that's sustaining you, because that cup is going to run dry. That there are times that we let it go and it builds up and then it just comes crashing in. So what we want to do is we want to figure out the best way to meet those challenges, learn some more self-awareness tools, and hopefully keep ourselves healthy and on our path to wellness. Next slide. This slide, just so you know, I like the saying. I had trouble finding it with a picture on it. But what is to give light must ensure burning. If you guys could do a favor for me, there are some activities we're going to do in the chat with the chat box. If everybody can throw in a couple of words right now about this particular quote and image, what does it make you think? What does it make you feel?
Are you able to see the chat, Kirsten?
I should be, but oh, there it comes. Christine said it's okay that we feel a bit affected by work, but it can be all consuming. Okay, I'm not going to pronounce a lot of names because I don't want to mess up anybody's name too badly. I'm very bad at that. Sympathetic feelings, yep. There isn't a view for people to see what other program participants to see what other people typed in. Oh, there's not. So the participants can't see the chat box?
Apparently not. Oh,
Oh, that's a
goodness.
bummer.
I'm sorry.
We will have to work on that.
Yes, so I'm still learning how to do this the right way. Every
It's
time
all
we
a
learn
learning
more.
curve. All a learning curve.
Warm vulnerability, feeling is perseverance, sacrifice, a different perspective to what people go through. It's okay what we feel a bit affected by work, but it can't be all consuming. Perseverance, strength, need for resilience, peace, relaxed, a little pain to achieve joy. Everything has a cost. There is no free lunch. In order for something to give off light, there is burning that happens. A little overwhelming. Keep going. Beautiful. You need fuel to keep it burning for light. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Stress. That at times to help others, we sometimes experience pain ourselves. Hope is light, and that is not to be taken lightly because even hope takes energy to present itself. Sympathetic feelings. We often give more than to the work than the person seeking treatment. Perseverance. It says that we must continue on so we can give light to our clients. We must have strength, be able to take the heat. In order to do something, in order to do something for others, you have to give up time. That time is for self, family, fun. All too often we sacrifice fun. We don't feel we deserve it. We see fun as a waste of time. You only have so much light energy to give before you burn out. The historical and environmental roots of Frankl's perspective. I think it is very relatable. It goes on and on. Do you want to bring out any others? And in the meantime,
No.
I'm going to try to fix this glitch.
I do know that someone towards the end of the chat did say there was a way to change it to all panelists.
Okay, I'm working on it. Whoops, you don't need to see all that. Sorry about that.
So what I think is a big takeaway from this quote, again, we're professionals who provide care. It is helpful to be reminded in this statement, what is to give must endure burning. Quality care, as we know it, requires empathy, it requires compassion, it requires passion for the work that we're doing. Like I said, these are not things that we do to get rich. These are jobs that we do because we love the work that we do. Sometimes we have to expose who we are, share a little bit about ourselves, open ourselves up to vulnerabilities, and that can be scary. And when that happens, and then it starts happening too much, then we're back to talking about vicarious trauma. For whatever it is that you do in the health and human services field, to be effective, you need to make sure that you maintain an active personal life and that you really try to leave as much work at home as you possibly can. Because I'm going to say it right here, I take work home with me. It's a necessity at times, but sometimes it is just the way that it is. But I have to learn to balance that, and I have not always been the best at this. But you have to learn to balance it because you don't want your physical health or your mental health to suffer. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to break down some of these terms. Burnout, and again, many of you know what this term means, but it's related to that feeling of being overwhelmed. You're feeling so overwhelmed that you don't want to get up and go to your job, or you find reasons to call in sick. You just begin to kind of check out at work. You feel so overwhelmed, you don't always know where to start when you have problems to tackle. It can also just be work stress. You may reach the point where you're having a bad day every day. And if you have had that many bad days in a row, then you need to take a look at where you are in terms of burnout. When you've lost joy for your job, again, we want everybody to be happy at work, and we want everybody to get their work done, because that's how we serve our participants and our clients. But if you've lost that joy, then you need to take a really good look at your work life and see if there are some changes that you can make. This can occur in any professional setting. I think that we discuss it more in Health and Human Services because we deal with a lot of personal, I don't want to say trauma, but we deal with people sometimes when they're at a crisis stage and what they're struggling with. Sometimes they're just having difficulties that we have to support them through. But it doesn't really matter what setting it's in. It could be in a law firm, it could be in a restaurant, it could be at the Tim Hortons, it could be at Walmart. Any professional setting can have people subject to burnout. Right? It can progress slowly as results in like very emotional exhaustion. You didn't used to be cynical, but now you're feeling cynical. And it can also bring about feelings of feeling insufficient, that nothing I do is quite right, that I'm getting judged for everything and nobody could possibly understand how I feel. And that I hear a lot with myself, with the different agencies that we work with. But what is important to remember is that people really need support when you see signs of burnout. So if you see someone whose their mood has changed a lot over the previous several weeks or months, they're not approaching the job the way that they normally have, it's okay to go up to them and say, hey, I've noticed that you're struggling a little bit lately. Can we sit down and talk about it? Or just, hey, we haven't sat and chatted in a while. Let's do that. And I know that the last year has been really challenging with COVID, and a lot of the physical and personal interaction that we get has had to leave our lives. And everybody has Zoom fatigue. I have huge Zoom fatigue. I'm tired of, I love seeing everybody's faces, but I would like to see them not through the computer screen. And I know that that's challenging, because when you don't have that camaraderie with your coworkers, that can really kind of wreak havoc on your physical health and your mental health. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is a chart called the burnout curve. Normally at this point, I would ask if anybody had seen it, but I don't know, Amy, if we're still working with the chat box.
I can't figure it out.
We will try to figure it out for next month. Right. So what the burnout curve is your work output and satisfaction is at the top of the curve. And then at the bottom of the curve, emptiness, sense of emptiness and worthlessness. So I'm not asking anybody to share, but I would like you to look at this burnout curve. Think about where you are. Some of you could be absolutely on the top and be great. Some of you may be struggling towards the bottom. If you are struggling and you're towards the bottom of the curve, please don't ever be afraid to reach out. Reach out to a coworker, reach out to a family member, reach out to your supervisor. Just reach out. Don't let those feelings overwhelm you. All right, next slide, please. So I have a question for you. And I know this may seem like a random place to have put this, but it'll make sense eventually. Is burnout an ethical problem? What does everybody think about that? And if you're typing in the chat box your answer, could you tell me a why? And I can't give you the answer until everybody answers. So what do you guys think? Is it an ethical problem? And if it is, why? Or if you don't think it is, can you give me a why not? So I see a few answers in there. I really, first of all, I like the people who will tell me no, because anybody that wants to argue with me, I'm always up for that. And to be really honest with you, you could answer it either way, and you could make an argument for it either way. But it's something I would want you to stay aware of. So my answer to that question is yes, it is. In all human service work, the core ethic is to do no harm. If we are cynical, if we're unfocused, if we're ambivalent, we are not able to provide our best selves to and ensure quality services to our participants and our clients. We are in fact causing harm. Because if we're a negative influence, then we have not done good. So I want to go and talk about the two people that I saw who said no. I'm going to try and find you in my chat. My chat doesn't like me either, Amy. Okay, so someone said no, it is a mental problem and possibly health physically. Would the person that wrote that be okay with answering a little bit or giving us a little more information on that? So I saw a yes just come in that says yes, because you may not be able to fulfill your obligations. I would agree with that 100%. You may not be able to fill your obligations if you are not really taking care of yourself or taking care of the people that we serve. So I think it's really important to remember that we ask people about self-care because we want our workforce and our staff to be emotionally and physically and mentally healthy. But we also have to maintain that for the people that we serve. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you're working in OPWDD programs, OMH programs, OASIS programs, OCFS programs. Part of what we do is fulfill a charge to serve people.
I was just looking at the chat just to chime in here real quick. It looks like people might not be able to mute themselves or unmute themselves, Amy. So if someone was trying to talk, they might be muted perhaps.
So that's another way we can go. We can.
Yeah, I think you should be able to unmute everyone. And then people could mute themselves if they want to.
Okay. Maybe.
And thank you to all of you for helping us find the pitfalls in this platform so that we can fix them.
I am so sorry, everyone.
Oh, it's a good moment. We're learning.
Okay. So unmute everyone.
All right, if you're all unmuted now, does anybody have a question or comment about this topic so far?
I believe I have to go through and do each one individually, so
Oh, okay, well, that's gonna
bear
take a
with
minute.
me. I'm clicking as fast as I can.
All right. Can you change slides or no?
Yep.
Okay. So, oh, yep. Yes, you can. Good job.
Multi-talented.
So, as we start to get more specific with vicarious trauma, it's really important to remember it's a process of change that happens, because it's not that you don't care about other people who have been hurt. It's being
That person wouldn't pick up their phone. So she gave me the direct number.
They did, a cell phone number?
Yeah.
They did the same thing.
Called them like 5 times.
I'm gonna go back to the mute.
good plan.
Okay.
Good plan.
You can tell me when to,
When to unmute. Okay.
yes. I figured out how to do it quickly now.
All right. Can you go to the next slide?
Sure. I'm sorry.
So even within the concept of vicarious trauma, there are different parts to vicarious trauma. Cumulative means it happens over time as you work with survivors of trauma, people who are struggling for any reason. So if you think back to that curve that I showed you, you know, hopefully you start at the top, and you can have a slow and gradual dip down in that curve. And sometimes it's so gradual, you don't even realize that it's happened. So you've suddenly made, I'm sorry, did you say something? Okay. So again, you may not realize it's happening until someone may point it out to you, or until something occurs in life that you're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I didn't even see that happening. Okay. Process of change is ongoing, right? Which is a good thing, because if we're changing, then we can grow. If we're changing, we can adjust our personal habits that may be causing us to be on the bottom of that on the bottom of that curve. When we see that those things are happening, we need to build in some tools to our toolbox, which we're going to go over in a few minutes. But it is really important to always remember, change is possible, always. So sometimes we just have to become more self-aware to figure out what those particular changes may need to be. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that we all have, because again, good people, is really strong empathy. You know, and as you guys know, that's when you identify with the pain of people who have endured challenging things. You may take on their grief, their fear, their anger, their despair. And why does it happen? Sometimes it happens because we may identify with someone that we're working with. Some struggles that they are talking to us about, we may have had similar situations in our own life, and that can bring on levels of vicarious trauma. So I'm going to ask you this, and I'm not going to make us type in the chat or anything, but what sort of problems or people do you find easy or the most challenging to empathize with? So I want you to think about that for a minute, because it's really good to know those kinds of ends of the spectrum, because sometimes we can have so much empathy for a person that it's easy for us to deal with their struggles, but potentially to the point where we're still taking on what they've overcome. If you can identify some people or situations that are emotionally challenging for you, that you take on because, again, they reminded you of trauma from your own life. Why is it difficult to empathize with them? And what are those qualities that, if you think about clients or participants that you have now, think about, is there a pattern through the positive? But yeah, I always seem to do more for people who have been struggling with this, or I really have a hard time over here on this end of that spectrum because I just find what they're going through, it just reminds me so much of me that I can't work with them. And part of that may be because you would like them to make different choices. And when people don't make those different choices, we take on that negativity. With someone that we have extra empathy for, it may be because they did make decisions that we agree with. Oh, and somebody did answer us in the chat. What are some ways that caring about people who have hurt you affects you? If you guys want to throw some answers in the chat, I will keep talking while you do that. And thank you for all of you who are typing.
When you enter your comments in the chat, please put it to our panelists, host and panelists, to make sure that Kirsten can see it.
All right, Amy, you want to go to the next slide? All right, so I told you that quote would come up again, that you can't pour from an empty cup. Our commitment to the people that we serve comes with a strong sense of responsibility. That can lead to high expectations and eventually may contribute to a person feeling burdened or overwhelmed or hopeless or helpless. So it's really important for us to remember having a strong commitment is good. Having a strong sense of responsibility is good, but we're not perfect. We're humans. So sometimes we got to cut ourselves a little slack. Sometimes you may have to cut that 80-hour work week down to like 60 and be comfortable with that. You know, I would never turn my back on someone who is in crisis or in need, but I also have had to have conversations with people where it's everything that happens after 5 o'clock isn't an emergency. So let's go through and talk about what is an emergency. Let's talk about a list of words that you could text that means certain things, you know, and remind them that, you know, I'm here for you. That's something I do with my staff and the people that we serve. Okay. So this can lead you to extend yourself beyond what is reasonable for your own well-being or the best long-term interests of your participants. Because when I've dragged myself and I've stretched myself really thin, then how am I serving from that empty cup? So the question I have for you guys is, how does your sense of commitment and responsibility to your work help you? And how might it be hurting you? Amy, do you want to unmute everybody for this, or is it too hard to unmute everybody?
No, walking to the swimming thing.
Send me your order and we're gonna leave right now. I have.
Go back to muting everybody.
And is it better than 10 years for you?
Right. So I like what someone wrote in the chat. Self-care is very important. Is a very important commitment in any field that works with people who are in need, and you're filling up their cup from your cup in any way. That way your cup never ends up empty. If I understand what you're saying, it sounds like you're almost saying it's like a rejuvenating cycle. So I may pour out of my cup into a participant's cup while they're simultaneously pouring it back into my cup. And if I'm wrong, let me know, but that was kind of what I was hearing. And I think that's a really beautiful sentiment. Let's see, what else do we have in here? A sense of commitment and responsibility can be too overwhelming sometimes. We are our own worst critics. We tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves, I can see Amy smiling at me as I say that because she knows I have a tendency to do that. And it can be very, very devastating. Again, we're not perfect. So why we tend to feel that we have to be perfect, I don't understand. And I wish I did understand it because then I could stop doing it too. And I like what the person said about their commitment adds to their resilience because it is so close to home. So sometimes it is choosing a job in the field that supports things that are going on in your life. I started my career in OPWDD programs because my son has autism. And that was something we were living with every day. And it made that work easier because I was working, I was learning, and what I learned at work, I was able to take home to my son to improve his quality of life. So, again, that rotation of, pouring out of your cup into someone else's who pours into yours is really a great thing. All right, next slide, please. All right, so because the unmuting hasn't worked, we're going to do this individually. And nobody's going to be required to share, but if somebody wants to share in the chat, that would be awesome. This is a reflection activity. So I would like everybody grab a piece of paper and give me a list of 5 words. How has working with trauma survivors positively affected you? Next question would be, how would it negatively affect you? And again, just give me 5 words for each of those questions. When we're done, we're going to put them in a word bubble together. And this can be something that you use as one of those tools I've been talking about to help you keep things sorted. So I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to do that. We should have like the Jeopardy theme music playing.
So you want us to put these into the chat?
If somebody has put something into the chat, we can talk about those things, but I'm not sure that, since it's a decent amount of typing, I'm not sure how comfortable people are feeling with that. I would also like to apologize for my froggy throat. I have had a froggy throat for a few days. All right, I'm starting to see some answers come into the chat. So we're seeing compassion, empathy, resilience, hope, reflection, growth, realization, determination. On the negative side, awareness of cruelty that exists in the world. I would say yes, especially to that. I wish I could all see your hands because I would just ask you to raise your hands. Are you the same person now that you were at 16? Probably not. As we get older, as we gain more responsibilities, it does impact how we view the world around us, and that can be very negative sometimes. So I'm seeing a lot of really good answers. Growth, compassion, and patience. Rewarding, hopeful, proud, meaningful. Pride, accomplishment, perseverance. I have to agree that pride is, I think, important. You don't want your pride to get in the way or burden you or hinder you from doing your job, but taking pride in the work that we do and knowing that we can make a difference for people, whether that's, sitting and talking with them, if that's, doing larger, projects with them. We do really hard jobs. It's good to have a positive feeling of pride for going to work every day. All right, next slide, please. So what I would like you to do is think about this for a moment. When do you feel the most alive, the most like yourself? When you feel that way, what are you doing, and what or whom are you surrounded by? And if you're in an office where there's more than one person doing this training with you, please talk with each other about this. You know, again, I'm not going to make anybody share if they don't want to, but I'm certainly excited to hear some people's answers. Oh, gardening and playing with a puppy, yes, definitely. Oh, I like that one. I'm hoping someone be the best they can for reaching their goals. When I'm around others with whom I connect. Oh, I love that. If it was warm enough to go to the beach, yes, I definitely agree with that too. Yeah, and what this tells me whenever I do this exercise with a group is we are all different people. We all have different things that bring us joy. We all have people that we want to be around, whether it's family, whether it's super close friends, whether it's a larger friend group, but there's no rule for how to be happy. You know, I'm the person who drinks herbal tea at night while listening to some music, reading something for half an hour that's not allowed to have anything to do with my work or my research, because that's how I end my day. I need that. But my answer to that is, what do I do to do my own self-care? When do I feel the most alive, the most like myself? When I'm around my kids, who, by the way, had the audacity to grow up, become successful adults, and move on. I'm not going to forgive them for that anytime soon. But, you know, like I said, but we're all different, and that's what makes us unique. It's what makes us kind of cool. And I think it's neat to find out what other people like to do. And I'm really excited about all the animal lovers out there, because I have the 2 best puppies in the world, and I love them. So as I'm reading through, I'm seeing a lot of really good things. Let's see. When I'm in nature, specifically around water, with animals, especially my dogs, oh, God, love that. Motorcycling with my wife, woodworking alone, doing volunteer work. Excellent. Engaging with family, especially grandchildren, if they're doing something important. Amy, is it possible to get a printout of the chat?
I hope so. I moved over the chat onto the screen. I don't know if it will be grayed out for folks or if you'll be able to see what I can see. Can you see it?
Can you guys see where Amy moved the chat to now?
Yes. Oh, right. Okay. I'm so sorry. It's sometimes the workarounds work just as well. Okay. Thank you.
That was awesome.
I will move it as we go forward if it's in the way of the text of the slides. I'm so excited. It's the little things. This is what makes me feel the most alive, solving problems.
And, you know, sometimes it doesn't really take a lot to make us feel excited and alive. And if we're remembering to do, you know, some of those things on a regular basis, that's part of how we avoid things like vicarious trauma. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left. Amy, if you want to advance the slide. So this is a large topic. That was not quite the halfway point of the slides. And what I'm wondering is, I'd like to answer some questions for you. The unmuting hasn't gone super well, so how do we feel about throwing some questions in the chat? It can be about something that we've discussed in the first set of slides. It could be questions that we didn't touch on in the first set of slides, but you may just want more information about.
The other option is if someone just types their name in the chat, I can unmute that person and then they can talk. If that works for folks. Someone has asked to see the first slide so they could see your credentials. So I'm going to
Control the slides.
quickly scroll back. There we go.
The slides will be available after the next session, right?
Correct.
If you need information prior to the next series, which is in May, you can go ahead and email me and I can get you information. All right, so does anyone have any questions?
So I guess I have a question.
You have a question.
With COVID, which has been long, I'm just wondering how vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue and the impacts of that might be different now than how because we hear about and encounter lots of trauma in the people that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
So how has COVID changed that, or has it?
I think it has a little bit. I think that when COVID first kind of became a problem with that first shelter in place or stay at home order, people were really excited. Wait a minute, we can do, excited being the wrong word, but they were relieved that they could still do work, that they could still support their participants or their clients, because we did have technologies like Zoom and Teams and Skype. So they still got to see their participants face to face, but it was a different type of face to face. But there was almost just this relief that at least they weren't losing people, that people were still getting services. I think, now that it's been longer than a year and people are really in the mood I think everyone wants to go back to normal, or at least as close to normal as it used to be. And I think that the vicarious trauma has started to really affect people again, because you're only seeing them through the screen. You're not getting to see all of the body language, or sometimes it's hard to pick up on things that you might, facial expressions, how somebody really looks. I'm not going to admit this. I may have worn pajama pants all day one day, but had a really nice shirt on the rest of the time. I am not doing that today, but it is not that anybody let themselves go. It's just we were home all the time. And then we're talking to people who we can't see in person. We're, only getting a smidgen of what it is that they are able to show us. And I think that causes us as helpers to take on another level of vicarious trauma. I know for me, I was working with someone who I had been concerned about just because of some situations that was going on in her life. And I started worrying about her more because I couldn't physically walk into a space where she was at and really be able to set my eyes on her and see her. And that really started to weigh on me. So I think that it's changed how we may get vicarious trauma symptoms, but not that they aren't there. So I think it's just changed it. See there, I was being all sorts of long-winded again.
That's good.
So I'm seeing that there's 2 questions in the chat. So as it relates to COVID, I've not felt as afraid of others as I am now, scared to be near. Really discourages my work and my empathy. I can see that. I mean, I've had staff members and I've had friends who they are afraid to go out of the house because they may have other health concerns. You feel like you're in this little protective bubble when you're home, and with COVID, with the vaccines, with side effects that are coming from the vaccines, with fear about the Johnson vaccine. By the way, I have my vaccines. I'm 3 weeks past my second shot. So I'm here to tell you that the feeling it gave me to get that second shot was really awesome, even though I was sick for a couple days. But I do know it's really caused a lot of people just to become very stressed at the thought of going back to the office full time, at the thought of going back to full-time home visits. I think it's because you've been in your bubble. It's just a little overwhelming to think about. I think too that we're in services that are meant to be in-person services. So when we can't, we may be doing every aspect of our job, but we may not be doing our job to the fullest extent that we're able to. And that's not the fault of anybody. That's just dealing with situations as best as you can. But there is that knowledge and that feeling that I'm not always doing everything to the level that I could. Now I feel guilty about that. And then I have a client or a participant who may not be doing as well as I would like them to do. Now I've got to worry about that. So I think it's important to keep in mind that as we're coming out of COVID, I hope, knock on wood, that those are very real things to fear. Those fear feelings are normal, and talk it out with someone, talk it out with a coworker, talk it out with a supervisor. If your agency has an EAP program, utilize your EAP program. Just want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And I think I'm almost out of time.
Well,
That is a good question. So it was put in the chat box. Also, I'm surprised to feel as angry as I am towards those who don't take it seriously, that think their own beliefs, personal freedoms, whatever reasons, are more important than doing everything we possibly can do to protect others. I think it's hard sometimes when, again, we're all different, to really put ourselves in other people's shoes when it comes to something like the pandemic, because somebody doesn't believe the way that I believe, that can make me angry. Because if I believe that I'm really right, and I am, because I'm never wrong. Just kidding. Just kidding. That anger is normal, but it's hard and it's challenging to deal with. And that's something we want to be aware that we don't want to take in with us when we go to meet a participant or meet a client. You know, I feel the way that I feel about the virus and the vaccines. But you know, even with my agency, we don't tell people that they have to get a shot. We recommend it. We remind them that everybody's got to go back to work at some point, but we'll work and support them in whatever way they need us to. But feeling angry, as long as it doesn't consume you, is not a horrible thing. All right. Any last minute questions? Concerns? Rude remarks? No rude remarks. So thank you for having me today. I really appreciate your time, and please come back for part 2, May 21st. Amy?
May 25th.
May 25th. All right. So thank you. I look forward to seeing all of you. And yes, all the slides will go out after the May presentation.
And before you go, I would like to ask you all to complete the evaluation, which I put in the chat before, but I will put it in again. So this is the link to the evaluation right here. I had also pasted the link to register for the May session. By the end of this week, I will be sending it out to everyone who registered and participated in this session. So you'll be able to get it then. As Kirsten said, it will also be available. The presentation will, hopefully the recording, if I can figure out that technology, that will be after the May session. So you've got to come to hear about it. Otherwise, you just have to wait. I also want to state again that the June session, which will be lethal means reduction, the how of suicide prevention that makes a difference. Presenters are Celia Spacone, who is the coordinator of the Erie County Suicide Prevention Coalition, and Katie Couric from the Veterans Administration. Those invites and notices will also be going out this week. You can also look on the Erie County Department of Mental Health website, which is erie.gov/mental health. And there's a link to get to the page with all of the Workforce Training Collaborative training materials, past presentations, and more information. If you are interested in being a presenter, let me know. Call me, email me. If you have something you'd like to learn more about, we will find a presenter if there's a topic of interest. And again, thank you all for participating. We're so glad you could be here today. And have a wonderful day. Thank you, Kirsten. You rock. Can't wait till next month.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay.
I don't see a participant. Oh, there it is.